She stood in her driveway staring at 4 empty patches of dirt. I never told them to remove those plants, she said to herself. Just hours earlier, the landscapers had been trimming bushes and cleaning leaves. Now her healthy sage plants were gone. When she asked for an explanation, the crew on site told her, "Boss said, clean everything up." Then the contractor stopped answering calls. What began as a simple yard cleanup became a lesson in trust, documentation, and the costly tactics of a landscaping scam. This is Fraud in a Moment, and the truth starts now. The Missing Sage: How 4 Plants Cost Dorothy More Than $500. Dorothy Gilroy, an 83-year-old retired widow, took pride in maintaining the desert landscaping around her Arizona home. Every plant had a story, every flower bed had been planned carefully. She wasn't looking for luxury landscaping. She just needed a little help with yard maintenance. When a local landscaper offered to rake leaves, trim bushes, and remove overgrown vegetation for a reasonable price, Dorothy felt relieved. The contractor appeared friendly and professional. That was the beginning of the problem. Dorothy hired his crew to clean up her property. The work seemed straightforward. Rake leaves, cut bushes, remove 1 tall shrub. General yard cleanup. Nothing unusual, nothing controversial. Most importantly, Dorothy never authorized the removal of 4 mature sage plants that were thriving in her yard. Yet when the crew left, those plants had disappeared. When Dorothy called the contractor, she expected a simple misunderstanding. Maybe the workers made a mistake. Maybe they would replace the plants. Maybe they would apologize. Instead, she encountered silence. Her voicemails went unanswered, so she texted. The contractor offered a short reply. Workers thought they were dead. "They weren't dead," she texted back. "I want them replaced." He offered nothing. She texted again. "At least refund what they cost." Nothing. The conversation ended exactly where so many fraud stories begin, with a victim talking, texting, and a contractor disappearing. Promises never materialized. Monies never returned. At first, Dorothy blamed herself. Maybe she hadn't communicated clearly. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it was only a few plants. But that's how many scams work. Financial loss is often small enough that victims hesitate to fight back, yet large enough to leave them feeling cheated. Fraudsters understand that so many seniors want to avoid confrontation. They count on their victims simply giving up. And many, if not most, do. A month later, Dorothy still looked at those empty spots in frustration and despair. The loss wasn't really about 4 sage plants, it was about consent. Someone entered her property and decided what would happen without her approval. And once the money was paid, communication stopped. That was the moment the real damage occurred. The realization that her trust was exploited. And in a cruel twist of fate, upon hiring another landscaper, they walked through the yard discussing replacement plants, and he suddenly stopped. "Those look familiar," he said, pointing across the street. "What does?" Dorothy replied. "The sage plants." There, growing in a neighboring property renovation project, were 4 mature sage plants that looked remarkably similar to the ones Dorothy had lost. What did we learn from this story? 1. Landscaping scams often follow recognizable patterns. First, the friendly service. Second, the unauthorized work. Third, comes the dispute. Fourth, the disappearance. 2. Always get a written description of every task to be performed. Without written agreements or detailed work descriptions, proving what happened can become difficult. 3. Photograph your property before work begins. Without photos, proving what happened can become difficult. 4. Never assume workers know what should or should not be removed. 5. Document conversations by text or email whenever possible. 6. Be cautious with cash payments. Never pay before services are rendered satisfactorily or at least started on site. 7. Request receipts and itemized invoices. 8. Immediately report unauthorized work. 9. Research complaints and reviews before hiring a contractor. 10. Never let unanswered calls or missed promises continue indefinitely. Act quickly. 11. Trust your instincts whenever something feels wrong. Dorothy thought she was hiring yard help. Instead, she was learning an expensive lesson. A landscaping scam doesn't always involve thousands of dollars. Sometimes it's unauthorized work. Sometimes it's property destruction. Sometimes it's a contractor who vanishes the moment accountability is requested. The empty spaces left behind weren't just missing plants. They were reminders that every agreement should be documented, and every senior deserves respect, transparency, and control over their own property. Money may eventually be replaced. Plants can be replaced, but uncertainty lingers forever, and victims are left wondering whether an entire transaction was honest from the very beginning. This has been Fraud in a Moment, where we expose the schemes hiding in plain sight and give you the tools to protect what's yours. Until next time, stay alert, stay steady, and remember, when the promise of a stranger is a clean and pretty yard, know what's expected before and after to keep you on your guard.